There are some times here on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel when we get together with Paul Finebaum and discuss the Saturday that was. Sometimes there's more anticipation than others. This is one of those after a remarkable week 10, after a stunning week 10. Use whatever adjective you want to describe it. But Paul, good afternoon, good morning, happy clock change. What a Saturday we had, not only in the SEC, but a couple of results that are going to shake things up the rest of the way.
Yeah, I mean, the game of the century did not live up to it, but the nightcap did. As once again, Alabama losing becomes the story of the day, and it was epic and it was memorable. And Matt, it's hard not to feel a sea change in the SEC this morning or this afternoon, wherever you're consuming this, with Alabama, for all intents and purposes, being eliminated from the race. And I won't waste a lot of time on historical perspective, but this is the first time since 2010 they've essentially been out of it before Thanksgiving, and they have not been out of it many times, as you well know.
Yeah, it's the only time they missed the playoff, the 2019 year, the Joe Burrow LSU team that ran through the SEC West on their way to a national championship. So let's start there with Alabama, LSU, overtime, Brian Kelly, play call. Let's play to win this thing now. Mason Taylor from Jaden Daniels. Let's start from the Alabama perspective for a minute, because that's where you went with it. Here's what I find surprising and a bit shocking here Sunday morning. We came into the season with the returning Heisman Trophy winner, with Jahmyr Gibbs, in my opinion, the best all-purpose back in college football. Will Anderson, the best overall player in college football. Dallas Turner, who's an absolute freak. With some people who cover this team whispering this could be one of the best Nick Saban teams we've seen. And yet you just put it out there. Paul, they're not going to be in the college football playoff. And to me, that is shocking.
It is. And Saban caught a lot of flack when he called last year a rebuilding year, even though they started the season #1. What he was really saying is this is not a rebuilding year. We've got it. And he was confident. And you can choose your words harshly, or you can be calm and say Nick Saban will recover from this. But I don't know the answer to that. I know he's wasted. The best quarterback perhaps in Alabama history, maybe one of the best defensive players, and you laid out the rest of the team, and it just seems a shame, quite frankly, if you look at it through Alabama, from an Alabama perspective, what has happened. And we can. I thought it was interesting last night. Nick Saban said, he wasn't really sure how to respond. He said, "I'm not second guessing anyone." Well, he ought to second guess himself, Matt, because this has been Nick Saban's worst coaching job at Alabama. This is, by my count, the fourth time. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 that he has been out coached. You go back to Sarkisian, Texas. Obviously, Jimbo Fisher out coached him. Josh Heupel. Add Brian Kelly to that list. Every once in a while you'll see Saban get outmaneuvered in a championship game against Dabo or somebody else, but this is now 4 times, and I'm stupefied when I see some of his decisions. The end of the Tennessee game, total mismanagement of the clock offensively, and disastrous defensive coverage on the back end. When Tennessee won the game, and last night twice he went for 2, and Matt, I don't care what the chart says. You're Nick Saban. You can make a judgment call. Again, I don't think the chart called for Brian Kelly to go for 2 to win the game, but that was his instinct, and Saban just doesn't seem to be coaching on instinct. He looked lost one time on the sideline. I think there was an interception, and he's like clapping. I don't want to make too much out of it, but there's no way you can't make too much out of it. It feels like the dynasty window is closing. It feels like this season has taken a turn, and I can't calculate what is going on or guess what is going on in Nick Saban's mind, but he looks miserable. And what I hear from my Alabama friends, and this is classic, we, meaning Alabama fans, need to fire the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. And you talk about that when you have a coach who's in transition. Is he going to make it? Is he not? Right. Get rid of the staff. This is Nick Saban. These are his guys. He's stuck with Pete Golden now for 5 years. he's all in on Bill O'Brien,
O'Brien, yeah.
and Nick Saban's pretty late in his career to be firing assistants to save face, but that's what you're going to hear for the next few weeks.
Yeah, 2-point conversion conversation. Let's go there because Galloway and Dan Mullen, guys that I sat with for 16 hours on Saturday, when we were watching that, we were looking at it and both of them were saying it. And even you don't need to go for 2 when they went for 2, because what happens is it starts a pattern of chasing points.
Right.
You don't hit the first 2-point conversion. Now you lost a point that you would have gotten with the extra point, and now you got to go chase it again. So let's just go back into the game and not go for 2 on those 2 instances and kick the extra points. Well, guess what Will Reichert's field goal is time expires. It's for the win.
It's over.
And so you can get into all the books and charts and analytics. Well, it's for some reason in college football, and this is a much bigger picture conversation, but in some reason we've stopped looking at a decision that's going to bear seeds in the fourth quarter and started looking at right now, get the 2 now, get the 2 now. We've got many examples of how that's going to come back and get you. And now those decisions early in a game to not just kick the extra point and think about it big picture knocked Alabama out of the college football playoff. And we're sitting here this morning thinking, well, how in this game did Brian Kelly coach a better game, which he did, than Nick Saban?
Yeah, and again, you put your team on the defensive too when you don't get that. It's okay with giving them confidence, but there's just something about it. And I listen. We all know Nick Saban turned 71 this week. Everyone's looking for signs, but I hear things from people that know him very well. I hear things from inside that program, and there are whispers that this is not a diminished Nick Saban, but there's a fractional difference between this year and last year and the year before, and I think that's obvious. It's a cliche to say what I'm about to say, but if you want to see what Alabama football looked like during the absolute pinnacle of the Saban era a couple of years ago when they were in the championship game every year, just go over to Athens. That's what Nick Saban football looked like at its peak. It doesn't look like that anymore. And I don't think it's a lack of talent. There's plenty of talent there. It's a matter of putting people in the right position and getting them to play well. And there's some explosive players who are missing. Please don't misunderstand me. There's no way you can, when you look at Devontae Smith and Henry Ruggs and Judy, it's an endless streak.
Jamison Williams, Jalen Waddle, all of them.
Mechie last year. These guys all made, and the guys but Brooks made a huge play yesterday. There were some big plays made, but that one play by Bryce Young.
Oh,
that was a Heisman moment, but
yeah.
The defense can't hold up, and we're seeing a lot of things changing in college football right now. And Nick Saban's program, it seems like it's regressing. And I know somebody's going to come out of their chair and go, "What are you talking about? They lost by a field goal to Tennessee, and they had a field goal that perhaps could have won it." But you're talking about 2 teams that Alabama should not be losing to.
Well, and you mentioned it a second ago, it's part of the storyline. Texas, Quinn Ewers goes out. They had to fight to get that win. And then now Texas A&M's awful. And with a competent
6 losses.
With a competent play calling quarterback, they could have beat him again in a game that they had no business hanging around. And so we have touched on this before, and I don't want to go dive too far down this path because I do want to get to LSU. We've talked about how the evolution of college football over the past few years, where players now have as much, if not a little bit more power than coaches now.
Mm-hmm.
And in a Nick Saban run program, it's this is mine. You were fortunate enough to be a part of what I'm going to provide you.
Exactly.
Now there's nicer cars in the parking lot. There's really nice, expensive suits. And now the players, I don't know if that's it, but something in the last few years has changed a little bit in the sport, which appears to have some kind of factor here.
Matt, you work at a big corporation where there are happy campers and disgruntled people. We have seen it all. And I'm about to say something that you may laugh at. Nick Saban seems like a disgruntled employee. Now, as I say that, he's the highest paid coach in college football. He's got a lifetime contract. What he's disgruntled about isn't his salary, isn't his contract. It's not his working conditions. He's disgruntled about the condition of college football.
Right.
He hates it. And I don't care what he says about NIL. He doesn't like that. He doesn't like giving players freedom. He doesn't like entitled players. And it just seems like what we saw him that night that created that firestorm that now seems like ancient history with Jimbo Fisher, that was really him talking. And I know that was real because I had heard the same thing from Nick Saban a couple weeks earlier in a private phone conversation. I've spoken to other people in prominent positions connected to college football who have been at the other end of Nick Saban complaining about this and why can't this guy do that? And I just don't think he's been able to scrape that away because players are smart. They see what's going on. They know that whatever they get out of Alabama, it's because Nick Saban was forced into doing it to be competitive with Kirby Smart and everyone else. But I think it's, I mean, Brian Kelly's 10 years younger than Nick Saban. He's still in a pretty senior age group. He looks like a new man. Nick Saban looks like an old man.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.